He said I'd be out by Friday. Like it was a fact already printed on paper. Like my life was a box he could tape shut with one clean strip of authority. We were in the kitchen, sunlight on the counters, Milo laughing at cartoons down the hall, and Nolan Pierce leaned against the sink with that relaxed smile he used whenever he wanted the world to believe he was reasonable. Friday, he repeated, tapping his phone. The locksmith's coming. Pack your stuff. Don't turn this into a scene, Lena. I kept my voice low because Milo was 8 and the walls in our house were thin. You can't lock me out. We're still married, and I'm on the deed. He gave a short laugh. My mom's already checked. This house was a gift from my family. You're basically a guest. A guest in the home I'd painted, repaired, and protected while he called it our future. Whenever he needed me to smile for photos. He walked past me and called out the front door. You can pull up. She's heard the plan. I went to the window and watched a white rental truck roll to the curb. And behind it, his mother's black SUV. She stepped out with a clipboard, sunglasses, and the kind of confidence people have when they believe the law is a tool they own. That was the moment I understood this wasn't an argument. It was a scheduled removal. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I swallowed the heat in my throat and went to the bedroom dresser where I kept the boring papers Nolan always dismissed. Mortgage statements, tax bills, insurance notices, the stamped deed copy from closing. I opened it and traced the names with my finger. Nolan Pierce and Lena Alvarez, both of us, owners, not guests. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I could breathe. A bank alert, mortgage payment posted. But the amount was higher than normal. I tapped the details, and my stomach dropped. Home equity payment, HELOC. I didn't have a HELOC. I hadn't applied for one. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even talked about one. Yet the app showed disbursements over the last 3 months. Cash outs, transfers, tens of thousands. Disappearing into an account ending in 4419 that I didn't recognize. Within the first minute of Nolan's Friday threat becoming real, the legal and financial anchor snapped into place, sharp and simple. Hey, buddy, I said, soft and steady. Hey, buddy, I said, soft and steady. Want a sleepover at Aunt Marissa's tonight? His eyes lit up. With pancakes? Probably, I lied, because I couldn't tell him the truth yet, that our home had become a battleground, and his father had brought a moving truck like a weapon. I buckled Milo into my car, drove to my sister's, and only after her front door closed behind him did I let my breath crack. Then I called the bank. The representative sounded cheerful until she pulled up the account. Ma'am, she said carefully, I see a home equity line of credit opened 92 days ago. It was completed online. Documents signed digitally. No, I whispered. That wasn't me. There was also a change of mailing address, she added, 2 weeks after opening. To where? My hands were shaking. She read it out. A P.O. box in a suburb 20 minutes away. The same suburb where Nolan's mother lived. My throat went tight. Nolan wasn't just trying to lock me out. He was draining me first. I hung up and searched my email for HELOC. Nothing. Home equity. Nothing. The bank's name. Nothing. Then I remembered the night Nolan offered to help me organize passwords, the way he took my phone and said, "Trust me. I'm making life easier. Easier to steal." I pulled my credit report. There it was. The HELOC, plus a new credit card, plus a small personal loan. Inquiries I didn't recognize. I called Tara, my friend from college who worked in bank compliance. She didn't ask me to calm down. She gave me steps. Don't confront him, she said. Get records. Pull county property filings tonight. See if anything changed. And find a real estate litigation attorney. Fast. County filings. My hands went numb as I opened the recorder's website and searched our address. Deed, mortgage, then something I'd never seen. Quitclaim deed, recorded 6 weeks ago. Grantor, Lena Alvarez. Grantee, Nolan Pierce. I clicked the scan, and my name stared back at me in looping cursive. Not my signature, not even close. Notarized, stamped, recorded. For a few seconds, I couldn't feel my legs. Then the anger arrived, clean and focused. He hadn't just said I'd be out by Friday. He'd filed paperwork to make it true. I printed the document at Marissa's house and stared at the notary seal. I recognized the name. A notary Nolan's mother used for her real estate errands. Family business. I wrote a timeline on a legal pad through the night, because fear gets smaller when you turn it into dates. 92 days ago, HELOC opened. 6 weeks ago, forged quitclaim recorded. Address changed to Nolan's mother's suburb. Today, moving truck. Locksmith threat. Friday deadline. In the morning, I found an attorney named Sandra Klein. Her website didn't promise empathy. It promised action. When she answered, she said, "Start with Friday." I told her everything. The truck, the clipboard, the HELOC, the quitclaim. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She said, "You need emergency relief today. We file for a temporary restraining order to stop any lock change. Then we force the bank to freeze the line while we investigate. We also refer the forgery to prosecutors." Prosecutors? I repeated, my mouth dry. "Forgery is criminal," she said. "And if the notary helped, that's criminal too." Sandra filed the motion that afternoon. Threat of illegal lockout by Friday, irreparable harm, forged deed, fraudulent HELOC. She attached exhibits like bullets, bank screenshot, deed from closing, county record, my sworn declaration. A hearing was set for the next morning. That night, Nolan's texts arrived in a flood. "You're really doing this? You're making this worse. If you show up tomorrow, you'll never see that house again." Sandra read the last one and nodded. "Good," she said. He just put intimidation in writing. At the courthouse, Nolan arrived with his mother and an aggressive attorney in a shiny suit. Nolan smiled at me like he still believed confidence could rewrite reality. Judge Hartley was an older woman with tired eyes and zero patience for performance. She read the filings, then looked over her glasses. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "did Mrs. Alvarez sign this deed in front of a notary?" Nolan's attorney launched into a speech about domestic disputes and family property. Sandra cut through it. "Your Honor, my client did not sign this deed. The notary commission on the document appears expired. We have bank evidence of a HELOC opened based on this transfer, and we have a written threat to lock her out by Friday." Judge Hartley held out her hand. Sandra gave her a printout from the state notary database. Expired. The courtroom shifted. Judge Hartley's voice stayed flat. Temporary restraining order granted. "Mr. Pierce, you will not change locks, remove furnishings, or interfere with Miss Alvarez's access. Neither party may transfer or encumber the property. We will set expedited discovery and a hearing on the deed's validity." Outside, Nolan hissed, "You think you won? You just made yourself my enemy." Sandra stepped between us. "You've been her enemy," she said calmly. "Now you're on record." I went home with a police civil standby and opened the front door like it might bite. The rental truck was gone, but the walls felt stripped. Family photos missing. Milo's drawings gone. My document drawer open and empty. He'd tried to erase my proof. He couldn't erase county stamps and bank logs. Friday came. No locksmith, just the order taped to my fridge, and a new understanding of what Nolan would do when cornered. The next few days felt like living inside a file folder that kept getting thicker. Sandra told me to communicate with Nolan only in writing, so every interaction could be saved. That meant no late-night phone calls where he could twist my words. No hallway arguments where he could pretend I was hysterical. Just text, email, receipts. Nolan hated that. He wanted the old version of me, the one who tried to talk it out, the one who believed closure was a conversation and not a court order. On Monday morning, he showed up at the house right after Milo's bus left, pounding on the door like he still had a key in his voice. I watched him through the camera feed, heart pounding, and answered through the speaker. "You can't be here without permission," I said. He leaned close to the lens and smiled. "Open the door," he said softly. "Let's handle this like adults." "Adults don't forge deeds," I replied, and even saying it out loud made my knees weak. His smile vanished. "You're accusing me of a crime," he snapped. "You know what that does? You know what that does to Milo?" The words were a hook, meant to drag guilt into my chest. I didn't bite. "Put it in writing," I said, and then I ended the audio. He stayed on the porch for a long minute, staring at the camera like he wanted to burn it, then walked back to his car. As he drove away, he peeled out just enough to make a point. That night, I found a note taped to my mailbox. "You can't hide behind paper forever. No signature, no fingerprints I could see, just a message meant to make my skin crawl." Sandra told me to photograph it, bag it, and call police to document harassment. "We don't need to dramatize," she said. "We need to stack." Stack. That became my verb. I stacked police report numbers. I stacked screenshots. I stacked timestamps. I stacked every moment Nolan tried to make me small. Escalation came from places I didn't expect too. My boss called me into his office and shut the door, looking uncomfortable. "Lena," he said, "someone called HR and said you might be involved in financial misconduct. They said your name could show up in an investigation." My face burned. "It's my husband," I said quickly. "He opened accounts in my name. I'm the victim." My boss studied me, then sighed. "I figured," he said. "Your work is solid. I just needed to tell you so you weren't blindsided." It wasn't an official threat, but it did its job. It made me feel exposed, like Nolan had found a way to smear me without leaving fingerprints. At Milo's school, another shift happened. A teacher pulled me aside and said gently, "Milo has been quieter. He asked if you're going to move away." I smiled in the way mothers learn to smile when their insides are screaming. "We're okay," I said. "We're staying." I went back to my car and sat with my forehead on the steering wheel for a full minute, trying to breathe. Then my phone buzzed again. A notification I'd been dreading, a letter scanned into my email from the county clerk. Nolan had filed for divorce. Not surprising. But the petition included a request for exclusive possession of the marital residence, and an allegation that I had voluntarily vacated and abandoned the home. Abandoned. Because I took my child to safety for one night. He was trying to turn protection into weakness. Sandra wasn't surprised. "That's his play," she said. "He wants to force you into defending your character instead of his fraud. We won't let him." She filed a response within 24 hours, attaching Judge Hartley's order and my timeline. She also filed a motion in family court to consolidate property issues with the fraud litigation, so Nolan couldn't forum shop for a softer judge. Nolan reacted by hitting the place that always made my heart race: money. He stopped contributing to the mortgage entirely and texted me, "Enjoy paying for a house you stole." He canceled the utility auto pays from our joint account, then told me, "If you want heat, pay for it." He wasn't trying to save money. He was trying to make me fail. I learned quickly that financial warfare isn't loud. It's late fees, overdraft notices, small humiliations that pile up until you feel stupid for existing. So I changed tactics. I opened a new account in my name only, redirected my paycheck, and set every bill to auto-pay from an account he couldn't touch. Sandra helped me request temporary support through the family court, using his canceled insurance as evidence of bad faith. Nolan fought it, of course. He claimed he was struggling. He claimed his income was lower. He claimed he was helping by letting me stay until Friday. But the court didn't love his story as much as he did. At the temporary orders hearing, the family court judge, different courtroom, different tone, looked at Nolan and said, "You canceled your child's insurance?" Nolan's attorney tried to reframe it as an administrative misunderstanding. Nolan stared at the table. The judge ordered temporary child support and reinstatement of coverage. Nolan left the courthouse furious, and by the time I got to my car, there were 3 new texts. "You think you're smart. You're going to regret this. I can make you homeless with 1 phone call. Sandra told me to keep them. He's giving us a portrait of intent," she said. "He's telling you what he's trying to do." Then, late one afternoon, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera and saw 2 men in polos holding a clipboard, standing beside Nolan's mother. She pointed at my door like it had offended her. I took a breath and spoke through the camera. "You're being recorded. Leave my property." Nolan's mother smiled at the lens. "We're here for Nolan's belongings," she announced, loud enough to sound official. "We have a list." I didn't open the door. I called the police. When officers arrived, Nolan's mother tried to charm them, but the restraining order didn't care about charm. The officers told her to leave. One of the contractors looked relieved, like he'd been hoping for an excuse to disappear. After they drove off, my hands kept shaking. I sat on the bottom stair and tried to calm my breathing. Milo came home and saw my face. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing you need to carry," I said, pulling him close. "Just grown-up stuff." He nodded, but his small body felt tense. "Dad said you're making him sleep on a couch," he murmured. My heart clenched. "Dad is choosing where he sleeps," I said softly, "and you're choosing where you're safe." Sometimes motherhood is translating war into something a child can survive. Sandra's investigator, a quiet man named Luis, started working the notary angle. He visited the notary's listed office address, found a locked suite, and neighbors who said they hadn't seen anyone there in months. He pulled the notary's public filings and found inconsistent stamps on past documents. "Either the notary is careless," Luis told Sandra, "or the stamp is being used by someone else." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. Used by someone else. Like a costume. Like my signature. Then came the first real crack in Nolan's mother's armor. Sandra subpoenaed the P.O. Box records. The Postal Service required identity verification to open it. The form listed Nolan's mother as the primary holder, but the secondary access name was Nolan. Sandra's eyes flicked to me. "That's knowledge," she said. "That's participation." Nolan's attorney tried to quash every subpoena, calling it harassment. Judge Hartley denied the motions one by one. "Expedited discovery exists for a reason," she said in open court. "If your client did nothing wrong, Mr. Pierce should welcome clarity." Nolan didn't welcome anything. He started parking his car down the street at night, far enough that my camera didn't catch his license plate, but close enough that I could feel him nearby. Once, I found tire tracks in the gravel by the side gate. Another time, Milo's bike was tipped over in the yard like someone had brushed past it on purpose. Nothing big enough for an arrest. Just enough to make sleep harder. Marissa offered to stay over. I said yes, even though pride wanted to refuse. That night, as we drank the tea in my kitchen, Marissa said, "He always needed to win, didn't he?" I stared at the empty squares on the wall where photos used to hang. "He needed to own," I corrected. "Winning wasn't enough." 2 weeks after the TRO, Judge Hartley ordered Nolan to produce his devices for a forensic review limited to the property and loan communications. Nolan's attorney fought hard. Sandra fought harder. When the order came down, Nolan's face in court was the face of someone realizing his own secrets were about to become evidence. He tried to stall by claiming he'd lost his old phone. Sandra's investigator didn't even blink. "Carrier backups exist," he said. Nolan tried to claim the HELOC was legitimate because Lena agreed. Sandra asked for proof. He had none. And the more he lied, the more the court began to look at him like a problem that needed containment. Still, my body stayed on alert. Every sound at night felt like a key turning. Every unknown number on my phone felt like another trap. Escalation wasn't a single event. It was constant pressure. Then, one Tuesday, a certified letter arrived from a different bank. Notice of default on a loan I'd never heard of. Secured by my sole interest in the property. Sandra's face went hard when she saw it. "He's trying to stack liens," she said. "He's trying to make the title so messy you'll surrender." "How?" I asked, voice thin. "How is this even possible?" "Because paper moves faster than truth," she said. "But truth catches up." We filed an emergency motion again, asking the court to block any additional encumbrances and to order third parties to halt processing. Judge Hartley granted it within hours, and the other bank backed off once they saw the fraud allegations and pending injunction. I went home that night and realized I had been holding my breath for weeks. In the mirror, my face looked older. My eyes looked like someone else's. I thought about Nolan's casual, confident voice in my kitchen. Friday, locksmith, like it was simple. Nothing about this was simple, but I was still standing, and that mattered. Weeks passed with court dates and letters, and fear that came in waves. Nolan's attorney called me vindictive. Nolan told friends I was unstable. He posted online about false accusations. He tried to poison the story before the truth could speak. Then, around the moment I felt most exhausted, the moment the fight had chewed through most of my energy, Sandra called me in and said, "Sit down." She placed the bank's full HELOC file on the table. Not the summary, the full file. "Look," she said, tapping the application. The income listed wasn't mine. It was much higher. The employer listed wasn't mine either, a small construction firm I'd never worked for. Then she showed me the verification call log. The bank had called a number to confirm employment. The number belonged to Nolan, a prepaid line in his name. He answered pretending to be HR. My stomach twisted. He impersonated. Yes, Sandra said. And here's what he didn't anticipate. She slid another document toward me, a copy of my driver's license. But the photo wasn't me. It was a woman who looked close enough in bad lighting, similar hair, similar jawline, but not my face. They used a fake ID, Sandra said, which means someone physically presented this identity somewhere in the process. That pulls in more people. More people. Sandra's investigator traced the photo. The woman had a name, Candace Weaver, prior identity fraud arrests, a known player in mortgage schemes. Sandra's eyes were sharp now. If Candace Weaver is involved, she said, this becomes bigger than a divorce trick. This becomes a financial crime ring. The DA's office moved faster once Sandra delivered the file. An investigator took my statement, asked for texts, asked for the deed, asked for the door camera footage and the pharmacy receipt. He didn't sound surprised. Keep cameras on, he told me. Call police if he shows up. A week later, Nolan was indicted. Charges: forgery, identity theft, criminal impersonation, attempted theft. Nolan reacted the way I expected, by blaming me. He told Milo, "Your mom's trying to put me in jail." Milo repeated it at dinner with wide eyes. Is that true? I swallowed, then chose truth that a child could hold. Dad broke rules, I said. Grown-ups have to follow rules. I'm making sure you and our home are safe. Milo's voice went small. Are we going to lose the house? No, I said, pouring my whole soul into that word. No. The civil case hit a turning point when Nolan was forced into deposition. Sandra timed it carefully, because under oath is where liars either confess or hide. Sandra asked him, Did Ms. Alvarez sign the quitclaim deed? Nolan's attorney leaned in. Nolan's face tightened. On advice of counsel, Nolan said, I invoke the fifth. Sandra asked about the HELOC, fifth, the P.O. box, fifth, Northridge Holdings, fifth, Candace Weaver, fifth. By the 10th question, his confidence had drained out like air from a punctured tire. After deposition, Nolan passed me in the hallway and hissed, You're ruining my life. I looked at him and said quietly, No. You did. I just stopped cleaning it up. Something changed in his eyes. Surprise. Like he'd forgotten I was allowed to speak. Judge Hartley had seen enough. At the next hearing, she granted me exclusive use and possession of the home pending final orders and sanctioned Nolan for violating the court's restraints through his mother's attempted entry. Exclusive possession meant the house finally felt like mine again. Not because I wanted him erased, but because boundaries stopped being suggestions. But the HELOC lien still hung over the property like a shadow. The bank froze it, yes, yet they still wanted to be paid. They wanted the easiest solution. Sandra refused easy. At mediation, the bank's counsel tried. Ms. Alvarez benefited from the funds. Sandra's voice stayed cool. The funds were dispersed to an account not belonging to my client. We can trace them. If the bank insists on enforcing a fraudulent instrument, we will pursue claims for negligent underwriting and identity verification failures. We will subpoena your verification vendor and your notary contractor. The bank counsel blinked, suddenly cautious. Then Sandra, my attorney, delivered the pressure point. We also believe this HELOC was sold or serviced through secondary market channels shortly after origination, she said. If you represented it as valid, you may have repurchase exposure. The bank called for a break. In the hallway, I grabbed Sandra's sleeve. Sold? Sometimes, she said. And if they sold it, unwinding it costs them more. which makes them motivated to resolve it properly. 2 days later, the bank offered a fraud rescission track, but they wanted an admission from Nolan that the HELOC was fraudulent. Nolan refused. His ego couldn't survive the word. So Sandra went to the court and asked for an order compelling release of the lien based on the fraud evidence already established, plus Nolan's repeated fifth invocations. She built a wall of facts Nolan couldn't smile through. The order on the lien didn't come overnight. Courts move like heavy doors, slow to swing, but hard to stop once they're moving. In the gap, Nolan tried to create chaos one last time. He showed up at a Saturday soccer game, smiling too brightly, handing Milo a new pair of cleats like gifts could rewrite facts. Then he pulled me aside near the bleachers and lowered his voice. "Drop the fraud stuff," he said. "I'll let you keep the house if you sign a private agreement. No more lawyers, no more court. Friday rules. You walk away clean." "Friday rules," I repeated, almost laughing. He leaned closer, eyes cold. "You're tired. You can't afford this forever. I can." I looked at Milo on the field, chasing the ball with his whole heart. And I realized Nolan still didn't understand what I was willing to spend. "You already spent it," I said softly. "You spent my trust. You spent our peace. Now you're spending your options." He flushed and walked away, and that night he filed another urgent motion, claiming I was withholding marital property because I wouldn't let him retrieve furniture. Sandra attached the restraining order and his own fifth invocations. Judge Hartley denied it without a hearing. 2 days later, the bank's legal department requested a conference call with Sandra present. A calm voice on the line said, "We are prepared to rescind, but we need a court-backed pathway." Sandra didn't plead. She dictated terms: immediate lien suspension, written confirmation that all credit reporting would be corrected, a recorded release once the court order issued, and a preservation letter for every log, every vendor record, every identity check that touched my file. When the bank agreed, Sandra sent me a single text: "We're turning the machine." That's what it felt like. A machine, enormous and indifferent, finally rotating toward the truth. And for the first time since Nolan said Friday, I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and worked an entire afternoon without checking the door camera every 5 minutes. I could still feel fear in my body, but it was no longer steering. That night, I slept with my phone on silent, and the house stayed quiet, as if it believed me. After the indictment, Nolan changed tactics again. His threats got quieter, more surgical. He stopped texting from his main number and started using no caller ID. He'd leave voicemails that were technically harmless, but soaked in menace. "You're scaring Milo," one message said, voice soft. "You're making him think his dad is a criminal. Fix this, Lena." As if truth was something I could simply fix by lying. Sandra advised me to route all communication through counsel. Nolan responded by filing a motion for emergency custody, claiming I was alienating Milo and creating instability with my legal crusade. A legal crusade. That's what he called defending a forged deed. The family court set a hearing, and my stomach churned for days. Losing the house would hurt, but losing time with my son felt like losing oxygen. On the morning of the custody hearing, Milo climbed into my lap and whispered, "Am I in trouble?" "No," I said, hugging him tight. "None of this is your fault." In court, Nolan sat 2 tables away, hands folded, looking like a concerned father from a brochure. His attorney spoke about conflict, mental strain, a mother obsessed with revenge. Sandra didn't raise her voice. She handed the judge the indictment, the restraining order, the bank fraud file, the pharmacy receipt, and the school incident report. "Your Honor," she said, "this is not a parent protecting a child from the other parent. This is a parent protecting a child from a financial crime committed by the other parent. Mr. Pierce's motion is retaliation." The judge read, then looked at Nolan. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "do you understand the seriousness of the allegations against you?" Nolan's jaw twitched. "They're allegations," he said. "And yet," the judge replied, "they are supported by evidence and a criminal filing. Your emergency custody request is denied. Parenting time will continue per the existing schedule with exchanges at a public location. And Mr. Pierce, you will not discuss adult legal issues with the child." Milo's shoulders loosened for the first time in weeks. Outside the courthouse, Nolan walked close and whispered, "You think you're protected? Courts are slow. Life isn't." Sandra stepped between us again. "Say it louder," she told him. "Give me another exhibit." He backed off, eyes burning. That night, my neighbor, Mrs. Howard, knocked on my door. She was in her 70s, the kind of woman who watered her plants at the same time every morning and knew every dog's name on the street. "I saw Nolan's car parked down the block," she said quietly. "If you want, my porch light stays on all night, and if you hear anything, you call me." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. "Thank you," I whispered. Community became another kind of protection. Not legal protection, but human. Weeks later, the bank finally confirmed what Sandra suspected. The HELOC had been packaged for servicing transfer days after origination, then flagged once the fraud claim hit. Behind the scenes, money was changing hands, and the bank wanted to close the wound before it bled into their portfolio. They didn't do it for me. They did it for risk. I didn't care why. I cared that the machine was finally turning in my direction. When the lien release paperwork was drafted, Nolan tried one last time to stop it by filing a notice of dispute in the county records, alleging I was committing fraud. Sandra laughed when she saw it. Not a happy laugh, a tired one. "He's panicking," she said, "and panic makes mistakes." Judge Hartley agreed. She struck the notice, sanctioned him again, and ordered that any future filings against the property required court permission first. That was when I felt it, the moment the balance shifted. For months, Nolan had controlled reality by creating paperwork faster than I could respond. Now the court was controlling him. Fear didn't leave all at once. It just stopped driving. After that, I rebuilt routine like it was scaffolding. Homework at the same time. Dinner at the same table. Friday movie night. Even when the word Friday still made my stomach twist. Milo started leaving his backpack by the door without asking if we'd have to run. One morning, he taped a new drawing to the fridge. Our house, with a lock and a heart. I kept it. The quiet title hearing arrived months after that first kitchen threat. Nolan looked thinner. His suit looked cheaper. His mother didn't bring a clipboard anymore. Sandra presented the forensic examiner's report. Signatures didn't match. Notary commission expired. Journal missing. Digital logs tied to Nolan. Fraud file tied to Candace Weaver. Subpoena responses tied the P.O. box and the LLC to Nolan's own access. Judge Hartley looked at Nolan and asked, "Do you have any credible evidence, Ms. Alvarez executed this deed?" Nolan's attorney started, but Nolan raised a hand. "No," Nolan said, one syllable, an earthquake. Judge Hartley nodded. The quitclaim is void, she ruled. Title is quieted in favor of the original ownership interests. The HELOC, as a product of fraud, shall be rescinded and the lien released. This matter is referred for further criminal investigation and notary enforcement. Unwinding, rescinded, released. The words landed like air after being underwater. Outside, Nolan's mother tried to step close, eyes flashing. "You're destroying a family," she spat. I felt something settle in my chest. "You destroyed it," I said. "You just called it business." Weeks later, the bank's letter arrived. HELOC rescinded due to confirmed fraud. Balance removed. Lien released. I held the paper like it might evaporate. Milo saw my face and wrapped his arms around my waist. "We're okay," he whispered. "We're okay," I said into his hair. "We're staying." The criminal case ended with a plea. Nolan pleaded guilty to felony forgery and identity theft, restitution, probation terms, financial crime counseling, a protective order limiting contact. Candace Weaver testified as part of her deal. Nolan's mother faced charges for aiding concealment and facilitating the scheme. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post online. I didn't want applause. I wanted peace. So I did something quiet, something Nolan would never understand. I changed the locks myself, legally, with the court order in hand. I hung Milo's drawings back on the fridge with bright star magnets. I repainted the living room the warm color Nolan always hated because he said warmth made people soft. And near the entryway, I framed the judgment, not as a trophy, but as a reminder: paper matters, signatures matter, truth matters. Because the next time anyone tried to tell me my life was a deadline, the next time someone said, "You'll be out by Friday," I'd know how to answer. Not with begging, not with panic, with proof, with calm, and with the kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice, because it doesn't need to.